Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, workshop webinar, I should say. And this is, one of the webinars and workshops in our series that we have on Lakehouse Labs. So we're so excited to kick things off. Today we have two guest speakers. We have Eric Vogelpohl and Rick Freitas. So thank you so much for both of them for joining us and for doing this session. It's going to be super informational and really exciting. So before I kick things off, I want to introduce myself. My name is Ruthie Senanayaka, and I work on the marketing team here at Blueprint. If you have any questions or feedback that you'd like to share, you can always reach out to us at info@bpcs.com. I also encourage you to follow us on our social media pages. That's where we will be announcing all of our future workshops, webinars, events that we're attending, etc. So all of that will be on our social media page. We will also be sharing a link to this recording tomorrow on there as well. So if you'd like to catch it on there, you can hop on there. We also have a YouTube page with all of the previous workshops and webinars. You can just look up Blueprint Technologies on YouTube. But if you are unfamiliar with Blueprint, we are a technology solutions company, and we do everything from strategy to execution, and work a ton in data. And as you can tell, our partner is Databricks, and so we do a lot of work with them. We were actually named Velocity Partner of the Year last year, so it's been really exciting to work with them. And these workshops have been super helpful for a lot of people, and we hope that it's helpful for you too. I would love to just give you a couple housekeeping tips. If you have any questions at all, you can add them to the Q&A section or to the chat section. The Q&A section does allow you to add a question anonymously. So if you did want to, share a question there, you can do that as well. We also sent out an email to each of you that had your login credentials, so you can follow along on this as well, right beside them. So if you have any questions about your login credentials, feel free to add it in the chat and I will get that info to you as well. If this meeting was forwarded on to you by someone else, you would not have received those credentials. So message me in the chat and I will get them to you so that you can hop right in. Okay, without further ado, I will pass it along to Eric and Rick to introduce themselves, and then we will hop right in.
Hey guys, great to be here. Eric Vogelpohl. I have some responsibilities for tech and strategy at Blueprint. Been here, 5 or 6 years now, loving life and loving all things Databricks, and wonderful to have the opportunity to share this with you. Rick?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Hi, folks. My name is Rick Freitas. I'm a senior business intelligence engineer at Blueprint. Been here for about 2.5 years. Run a team of BI engineers, about 6 of us, that focus primarily on building out reporting solutions, utilizing mostly Power BI as our reporting tool. But certainly have some expertise in the Databricks SQL and visualization piece as well. So thank you.
Right on. All right, I think I'm going to steal the screen from you, right, Ruthie? All right. All right, everyone should have the welcome to the session notebook, right? All right, good deal. Let's get started. Okay, so here's what we've done. Our demos and our workshops and our hands-on labs are lovingly no PowerPoints whatsoever. We do everything in the tool. We develop, we document, we present. Everything we do in Databricks, and that's where we are right now. We are in the Databricks environment, for those that haven't logged into Databricks before. So what I'm showing you right now, just for a sense of where you are, I've got this wonderful left nav. This left nav is kind of your home screen. It's always going to be with you. And one piece of housekeeping note that's really important, Databricks has just updated their UI, their navigation UI. So if you are following along at home and you have this toggle on the bottom that says disable or enable the new UI, go ahead and check mark that. If not, if I disabled the new UI, it would look like the old UI, which is fine. It's easy to navigate, but it's not going to be exactly like what my screen has. So I would encourage you to click enable new UI. All right, so let's get that done. And again, so we are in a notebook. So Databricks, by and large, is a notebook-oriented development experience and analytic experience. I develop pipelines, I develop streaming data solutions, I develop my tables and my lakehouse, all of these things. The notebook experience is my first class IDE, if you will. You can use external ones, but by and large, most everyone uses this notebook experience. You can see I'm launching this from a repo. It's got a name. It's connected to a GitHub repo, etc. We won't go into that. So I want to get everyone familiar with two things. One, the Lakehouse overview, just so everyone kind of knows the terminology that we're using. So to do that, I'm going to bring up a really simple reference architecture. And this is a reference architecture you may have seen on Databricks' websites or their marketing collateral. We use this all the time. Very much a left to right data flow. So on the left for this lab, we have acquired data for 3 different data sets for you to experiment with. We've got data for flight performance, data for Iowa liquor store sales, which is a lot of fun to analyze. And we have the obligatory New York taxi cab data set that everybody uses often in various examples. So we've acquired that data already. We've stored it as raw. We've made tables out of that. That's raw data. We've processed it one step to the right, and we've cleaned it up, sometimes called silver data in the Databricks world. Maybe we call it staging data if you prefer. We've joined it, we've cleansed it, we've gotten rid of nulls, we've done a handful of things so that the data are in better shape. And then finally, some of the data tables are gold ready. Maybe they're curated, they're report ready, or they're in a data mart. That's kind of the left to right orientation of how the Lakehouse works. And of course, on the far right, we have all of these ways that we can consume data. Today, we're just going to use BI and SQL within the tool, but you could use any of these external modes of consumption. And the Lakehouse wouldn't work at all if we didn't have a Lakehouse format. We use the Delta Lake format in Databricks, and we get all of these wonderful capabilities for managing our data. It's optimized, it's ACID compliance, an open format I got shared. So that's generally speaking the Lakehouse architecture overview. So let's make certain that we can, I'm going to go back to my notebook, and we're just going to make certain real quick that everybody knows some of the major navigation UI components, because these are super important. There's like some home base components we always want to hit on. And one of those is the data tab. This is by far the most important tab in the Databricks ecosystem. Think of this as your home base. If you're ever lost, click on the data tab. And when you click on the data tab, it's going to bring up basically our table and schema and our catalog navigation experience. And this is known as Unity. This is the Unity catalog. And I can do all kinds of things. I can see into my Delta Lake. For example, I'm going to take a look at our workshop catalog, which is what everyone on this call has access to if you're following along at home. We have a schema or a database called data, just arbitrary. And just like the picture had in our notebook, we've got all of these tables available. And some of them are views. You can see the little glasses icon. It's obviously a view. So let's take a look at one of these examples. I'm going to look at, say, I don't know, the flights on time performance clean table. When I click on this, Unity is actually showing me in the navigation some things that make me aware and comfortable about the data table. I can obviously see its schema, makes sense. I can see some sample data. Obviously, it's doing like a top 1,000 or something like that. I can see details about this, where it's stored on my data lake, when was it created, who owns it, etc. I can see some history about this table. I can see when it was created, when it was appended to, when it was written to, when it was dropped, etc. One of the coolest things that I can see, however, is lineage. This is one of the first things we'll touch on before we jump into hands-on with Rick. I can see this lineage graph. So very simply, Delta and the Unity catalog give me this wonderful lineage view about how this data came to be. You can see that I had two other raw tables and we did some joins, and then we finally produced a view for, I don't know, the last couple of years or something, whatever recent is. So again, I'm going to kind of close this and go back and say, if you're ever lost, click data, and that reveals to you your navigation, at least of your data warehouse. So cool. All right, so let's go back. I'm going to go back and make certain that we didn't need to touch on anything else in our kind of exploration of the UI. We're going to talk about some of the hands-on lab objectives. And as I do, I'm going to punt this over to my friend Rick, and he's going to walk you through and get you started and do a handful of exercises and some hands-on labs that explore these data sets. We've touched on lineage. He's going to show you how potentially you can search the catalog and look for queries, find queries that other people have used that you want to take and build upon. He's going to show you how to work with data visualizations right inside the tool off of those data sets. We're going to potentially build a dashboard, and we'll talk about things like data alerts, and we can perform some performance and we'll say execution understanding of the various queries in the warehouse. So that's a lot. We've gone through the navigation. We've hit the home page. We know what a notebook is. We know our data page. And at this point, Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you get folks hands-on with some SQLing. Sound good?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Eric.
All right. And unless there's anything else you want me to cover, Rick, and if there is, let me know.
No, I think that's good for right now. We'll get kicked off and start talking about a few things. So let me go ahead and kind of share my screen. And let's make sure I'm sharing the right screen, because I have too many of them. Here we go. Share. Can everybody see okay? And folks, we can go ahead and make this kind of interactive. So if you've got questions along the way, please just chime in, either raise your hand or just take yourself off mute, ask me what's going on. But what we'd really like to do is kind of just walk you through some of how this works, right? So we've got, Eric was up in data. I've clicked down here in the SQL editor. Again, let's make sure, just to reiterate what Eric was talking about, this is the new UI that we're looking at right here. So these things are going to be broken out, not in a specific module, as you may see in the old UI. So I've got the new one turned on. I've clicked over to SQL editor, and this is really where you would do your queries. Now let's talk a little bit about this, because analytics here is going to be a little bit different than let's say a enterprise reporting tool that some of you may have used or not. There isn't really a semantic modeling layer in this tool. Your results, your query results, are what build your visuals, right? And so as I think about like what I would do if, since I've been doing analytics for quite some time, what I would do if I was using this tool is that I would be building probably some pretty large queries, SQL queries, that have joins with all the facts and dimensions that I want. So I have that in one query result, and do that for each report that I wanted to build, right? So that's a little bit different than how you might do it with an enterprise reporting tool, but there is a way your query result becomes your modeling layer that you might have in a different tool set. So again, just the ground is here. I'm in SQL editor. First thing I want to do is I want to go and change my catalog to workshop. So again, folks, if you've got this pulled up at home, let's do the same thing. I then want to go into my schema or my database, which is called data here. So workshop and data. And then I basically see all my tables and views that I have available. Again, anything that's got this little sunglass is your view. The rest of these are your tables. Today, we're going to just work with one table. We're going to work with this flights on time perf clean table. And we're going to walk through kind of pulling up some queries, having you do the same thing, and then building some visuals from that. Again, if you've got questions along the way, please stop me. I want to make sure we're all on the same page as we do this, right? So a couple of things I want to call out just in the user interface here, right? So as I hover over one of these, again, we're going to use this flights on time perf clean. I can do a couple things here just by hovering over this specific table. I can open a preview of this table by just clicking this button here. And you can see over on the right side here, now I've actually got a query already started. It just automatically dropped that in there. A select statement, select all from the actual table and the catalog and schema in here, and it's just limiting it at 50, right? And so actually, it actually ran there automatically, didn't it? So this just gives you a very good indication of your data. Obviously, if you're in analytics, you know you got to understand your data before you can do anything with it, right? So this is a very good way just to get a good view. What are the columns that I'm looking at? How is the data structured? If I come back over here and I click on this, I can actually see all the different columns of data I have in here. I can see my data types showing up here. So I get a very good sense, okay, did this get set up correctly upstream of what I'm looking at? Because if I've got, let's say, a date field and it's not set as date, then I'm going to have a problem when I'm doing any kind of analytics on this, right? So just a few things to look at here. What else? So button up here, you have by default, it limits to 1,000. We've got up here really is what becomes kind of your different tabs. So I could create a new query or open an existing query from here. And then we'll talk about this in a little bit in a moment, but I've got some other tools off of this plus button down here that shows me that we'll talk about, but gives me some different options here. If you have a particular query, and we'll do this, we're going to want to save it. You can schedule this. You could share it once you've saved it. Down here, you actually can get some really enriched stats about your specific, the query itself. And so if I click on it, it pulls up this window over here and gives me some information around how long it took, how large the data is that I've pulled from. Really kind of a rich interface here for different information, which you don't tend to get very easily in other tools. So I'll go ahead and close that back out. You could actually schedule a particular query here. We're not going to do that, but that's certainly something to do. So again, if you're driving, if we go and create a dashboard with a bunch of visuals, and you want to make sure that that's refreshing on a daily or even an hourly basis, you can do that. Let's stop there. I want to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page. Do we have any questions relative to what we've covered so far?
Not seeing anything in the Q&A, but if anyone has any, you can always add it in there. You can also raise your hand and I can unmute you so that you can talk as well. So feel free to do either.
Great. All right. So let's talk a little bit about just these other options that are available here. I'm going to click down over to queries. So queries is going to show all the saved queries, either my queries or all queries, depending on your permission structure. It'll depend on what you can see. I can star a particular one or unstar it so that those show up at the top of my list. I can come over to my queries specifically or favorites. So anything that's been starred, what's been put in the trash, and then there is certainly an admin view. If I've tagged any of my queries, then I can actually search relative to the query tag. Obviously, we don't have a whole lot in here, but if I had a good amount, I could just type in a specific word and have it pull up specific ones that have flight to it. Sometimes takes a little bit of time here. There we go. So these are all the ones where I've either used the word flight or flights. And again, we're going to just be using the flight data today, even though we have loaded some other ones. All right, and if I get rid of that, then it's going to pull up all of them again. So from here, what I want to, I think, we got a kind of a good sense. Actually, let's just do this fast. Let's show you dashboards. I want to give you kind of an example of what we're going to do together. And so this is just a very simple dashboard with a couple of different visuals that I put together just to give you an example of what you can do. Now, there's quite a few additional visuals that are available, and we'll show those to you. But this is really what you and I together are going to try to replicate. So that's on the dashboards tab. So why don't we go back over to workspace. So right at the top here, workspace, let's go ahead and expand workspace, and let's go into shared. And you should in here see a query called Flight Performance 2. Please let me know if you don't see this. You all should see it because of the permissions that we set up, but I want to know if anybody can. So if you can, then let's go ahead and click on that specific query. All right. And that actually pulled that up. So I have another query in here. I'm going to close this one since I don't need it. And now I have a query. Now, I want to be clear about a couple things here, because what we've done is we've actually put multiple queries in a single query page, basically. And we only did that just for usability purposes here. Now, I've actually set these up separately, but I want us to walk through that together. And so one of the things is that I went and run this right now, and I can go ahead and do it. I'm not going to get a separate window for each one of these queries in here, right? That's a little different than what you might get in SSMS or another SQL tool. It's not going to show you these. The real reason behind this is because whatever visual you create is going to be built off of the query results that you have. So this goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning. Either we are building things from a series of different queries, or you could put everything together in one large query that then gives you the results you want and drive everything off of that. Again, if I was to do that, if I was using this tool, that's probably what I would want to do, because then I could utilize some other features, filtering mechanisms that I would want to use in my report, right? Because a report static by itself, in most cases, is a challenge to use. Sometimes you want to filter the data down to a specific dimensional field that you have available, right? Again, some of those are a little bit more advanced. We're not going to cover that. We're just going to kind of go through the process of setting up several different separate queries, create some visualizations from those, and pin them to a dashboard. So at the top here, lines 1 through 3, you should see this text here, basically this query. So why don't we go ahead, and I want you to go ahead and select lines 1 through 3. Let's do a copy, and then we're going to open up, create a new query, and then we can just paste this in. Okay. And then basically we can either save it right in here, And so I'm just going to call this, because I've done this on time before. I'm going to do flight on time, hit enter. That gives it a name, but I still want to save it over here. All right. So I've got a query that we pulled out of a larger one, created a new one here. I'm going to run it, and we're going to see the query results. Not very fantastic, but as you can see, we're just counting everything in here. Really, this is telling me the number of flights that were on time over a particular period. Okay. Again, this is just to show us one specific visual that we can do from here. So let's go ahead and hit the plus, or just hover over the plus sign and select visualization. Now, by default, it's going to pull up histogram here, which isn't very helpful. And so if I use the little drop down arrow here, you see I've got quite a few different types of visualizations I can use here. One's for distribution, one's for looking at a time series of data. Really, actually, a pretty good set of visualizations here. What we're going to choose here is just counter, not unlike a card visual that you may have in another type of reporting tool, just called counter here. And then I can go ahead and give it a name, flights on time, and I can hit save. All right. So guys, I mean, we've literally created our first visual. Pretty easy to do here, right? Now that we've got one visual created, I think let's just start building a dashboard. Again, we're going to do this 3 more times. It's not that hard. It's pretty simple. But again, you have to understand that every time we do this, the visual that we create is based off of the query results that we have from the query that we just ran. It's really important to understand that. That is the reason that we wanted to take separate queries out of that large query that we have, because it wouldn't give you separate results. This one, it does. We get query results specifically for the visual that we're creating. Okay. So I've got one here. We've already created it. I'm going to go ahead and click the little down arrow, and I'm going to add to dashboard. All right. I already have a dashboard, but let's actually create a new dashboard here. So let's just call this flight data 2. You can call it anything that you would like. I'm going to hit save. Now, when I hit save, I'm going to do something. There's a couple ways. We could go to the dashboard field, but what I find is pretty nice is when I hit save here, and then add, it pulls up this little icon down in the right corner, which takes me directly to the dashboard view. You can see now I've switched over to dashboards. Okay. And so now I've got one visual at the top of my dashboard here. I can, by default, this isn't in edit mode, so I would have to go over here and hit edit, right? We've got this grid system where you can pin things to it, put it in different areas. I think I'm just going to keep this up in the top left corner since it's a card visual, and that's typically where you put those things. I can hit done editing, and boom, I've got one thing. Easy peasy here. So now let's go back to SQL Editor. Just clicking over here to the first item under SQL. And we're going to click back to my flight performance 2. I'm going to grab my second query that I have in here, Control C. Going to open up a new query window. Going to do Control V. Going to run it to get my results. This time I could hit save here, which is going to ask me to name it. And so this one, I'll just do flights total by year. Hit save. I've saved that. Again, I can get my visualization. Now, let's just talk quickly. We're really not going to utilize these because they're a little bit more advanced features, but there are mechanisms to filter your data. One's called a filter and one's called a parameter. Parameter is more specific to something that you're doing within the query that executes at runtime and minimizes the data that gets pulled back in the query itself. A filter is something that's a little bit more useful when we're talking about filtering a specific column of data, let's say in the browser view or in your dashboard, right? Now, there are some other differences there. Parameters, the documentation talks about parameters being used for larger sets of data and filters for smaller ones, but we're not going to deal with any of that today. But certainly something that we can discuss further, and or you can do some research on those two things. But really, they are the mechanism for you to be able to filter down your data. So I'll go ahead and I could right here is just create a filter that utilizes the year column. Let's go ahead and do that. So I just clicked on filter. I'm going to utilize the year column. I'm going to actually do multi-select because that may make sense for the visuals or the dashboard that we're creating. And I'll go ahead and choose save. You can see that it actually now drops a filter in here. And we don't have to do anything else. It just drops it. We could filter the data from here, but we're actually not. We're going to utilize that in the dashboard. And then let's go ahead and create another visual here. So this time it actually pulled up a scatter. I've noticed in some cases it does a pretty good job of utilizing a visual that would work in relation to the data that you have. So, you know, a scatter you could certainly use here, but I think I'm going to go ahead and change this over to a line chart. And so I've done that. You can see that it's pulled in by default my horizontal X axis, my vertical Y axis. There are some other features that you can change within here. Series, different colors. You could change a color if you wanted. Could add data labels if you wanted to here. Not going to do it on this one. I think you can get a pretty good indication of what the data is doing just looking at. Now, I have noticed that I think we only have 1 month of 2023 data, which is why you're seeing that drop off so much, but not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as well. And then visualization is saved. And then I can actually add to dashboard. So I use a little down arrow again, add to dashboard. And the dashboard, I already had an existing dashboard. We're going to add it to flight data 2, which was the second one that I've created as we've been on the phone. So we're going to go ahead and add that. I can now actually go see it over here. Could probably play with the size. So go up to here, edit. Maybe I can get away with doing that. Well, may not be as good, but we'll drop a couple things down here. You know, a couple other nice things is, you know, you've got hover mechanism here, so you can actually see the numbers as you're hovering over the particular line. Obviously, your x-axis isn't showing every year, so you get a little bit here of each year. So anyways, I think I'm done with that. I'm going to hit done editing. Going to go back to SQL editor. And let's pause here for a minute. Anybody having challenges with where we're at? Any questions on what we've done so far?
I'll make a quick note that I failed to mention when I was doing the quick overview, but everybody, if you look in your upper right screen on Rick's screen, you'll see it says workshop cluster and it's truncated, but it says serverless. This is a new capability of Databricks. In the past, we used to build kind of by hand a SQL endpoint or a warehouse endpoint or a SQL DW endpoint. And we had to understand things like concurrency and size, et cetera, and that was fine. It was easy to build, no problem. That mode is now called Classic or Pro, and the default experience it became GA this month, I believe, generally available. The default experience is now serverless. So essentially what Databricks has done is they've pre-allocated lots of storage or lots of compute from the hyperscalers, so from AWS, Azure, et cetera, and they can just allocate SQL resources to you as needed. They spin on almost instantaneously. They go to sleep when you're not querying them. They have some auto scaling and intelligent prioritization and intelligent routing capabilities for queries that make them super fast. I didn't talk about that too much because frankly, the user experience now is so simple. You just generalize the size you want and it does everything else for you, except add permissions. So normal grants and revokes, just like normal cloud data warehouses, who has the right to use or to spin up the cluster, those things are still in your control, but all the backend stuff all just happens magically.
And Eric, you said the serverless is now the default.
It is default. You need to go to your cloud provider. So AWS and Azure both have a list. They have a matrix of the regions that it's available in as that default experience. So East, West, Central, South Central, and then the variations of the same in AWS. You just look and see it'll have an X called serverless next to the region you're in. If you have it, then it is the default experience. If not, stay tuned. They're coming online very fast, and you can still just create a Pro or Classic, and your experience is essentially no difference. And when serverless is available for you in your region, there'll be a little upgrade button, and you just click it, and that's it.
Yeah. So in fact, you did this 3 weeks ago, and our region did not have serverless at that
Didn't
time,
have it yet.
right?
Right. Now we do. We're in, I don't know which region we're in. This happens to be in Azure, but that's okay. We're in East or West, one of the two. And yeah, the little button came up. I clicked OK, and everything else was fine. And queries come and go as they need. It turns the cluster on automatically, and there's no wait up. There's no startup time anymore.
Yeah, which is wonderful. I mean, before it could be 2 to 5 minutes, honestly, before it took to spin up, and now 10 seconds, you're ready to go. So yeah, thank you for calling that out, Eric. I think that's a really, really important part here.
And the other thing that we might want to call out is if you go to the compute tab itself, or the SQL warehouse tab, SQL warehouse there. Yep. We've got that. We've got query history also on the side. And yep, we can show people this. It's nice to see. So folks, the whole SQL cluster or the virtual data warehouse, if you're using another platform, this would be basically the same thing. You can see that it's obviously running in serverless. I've got a kind of a medium size, and I could make it 2x small, or I could make it like 2x big. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And we've got connection details, Rick. So if you've got users Tableau and Power BI, you might want to cover that real quick, how easy it is to connect to external.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you brought that up because that was something I wanted to talk about. So really, my expertise is with Power BI. So connecting to this is really easy. All you need is a server host name and your HTTP path. And in fact, your connector just asks for those two things. So that's all you really need. And boom, you're off and running, and you get to see, you basically, as we saw with the catalog and the database schema breakout, you see basically the same thing in your connector there. So you don't have to use the data or the visualization tools here. Certainly have the ability to connect to third-party tools that will allow you to do different things here. But we are certainly concentrating on what you can do inside of Databricks here, and specifically SQL. So good. If there's no questions on anything we covered there, then let's switch back to SQL Editor. We're just going to do this 2 more times. Again, guys, I think repetition here is just what's important. If you are actually going to be using this moving forward, it's just good to know there's just a few clicks. It doesn't take a lot of work here to actually build out something that would be useful for your organization. So we're going to go back to the flight performance 2. We're going to look at the query that starts on line 14. we're going to grab this one. We're going to do a Control C. We're going to open up a new query window. Control V. We're going to go ahead and run this. And we'll go ahead and save it. I'll give this flight departure, if I can spell, delay, we'll do a save. So as you can see in here, we're just limited to the top 5. You could obviously, if you wanted to, you could change that. You could actually pull all of them. I think there's only about 33, if I remember correctly, in this data set. By the way, just so you're clear, I think I looked at this earlier this morning. We're actually querying over about 170 million rows of data here. And so you can see pretty quickly that it's coming back. So, all right, so let's do another visualization here. So this is one where it actually, I think, did a pretty good job of pulling in the right a bar chart here. I think the only thing that I would maybe want to do is sort this so that it's showing ascending order. Now I could have probably, I think if I did descending order in the query, it would change that around. The other thing I could do is I could show a data label in here, which gives you some numbers. So again, there's some really, really good features in here. I can't do everything, but you can do a lot of different things. Colors, I could change that color if I wanted to. And then I can save this. And then I could pull that into the dashboard we've been working on, flight data 2, save and add. Let's go ahead and take a look and see where it dropped that. Yeah, put it in a pretty decent spot. Maybe if I again go up here and do edit, I could probably know if that looks any better. I've just got one more visual we're putting in here, so I'm just clicking and dragging this little caret in the lower right corner. Just to do that, again, you can drag anything around. It's just going to basically drop into this grid system. I'm going to go ahead and hit done editing here. We're going to do one more, and then we'll be done, and we'll actually have a pretty good looking dashboard here. So go back to flight performance 2. Going to come down to line 22 through 27. Control C, create new query. Control V, run. So basically we've got an origin city and a destination city. We've kind of renamed those as stage 1, stage 2. We've got the value here. So let's go ahead and save this. How about flights, top city pairs, hit save, go into visualization, and this one don't really like that bar chart, so let's see what a sand key would do. That's a pretty cool looking visual. Nice how, and we'll see that in the dashboard, how about how you hover gives you kind of the indication of where you're going from origin to destination, which is pretty neat. I'm going to go ahead and save this one. I'll go ahead and use the down arrow again, add to dashboard, flight 2, add. Click this when it comes up, get over here. Let's maybe edit this and do that, make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. Now there's a couple other things here. Let's just do one other thing since we're in edit mode right now, since it still says done editing. Let's go ahead and add filter. You can see this is actually a new feature that they've added recently. Now this can get a little confusing, but really is you could do a filter on the page here that you haven't set up in your query, but you could also utilize the filter that you set up in your query. So if I click over to existing query filter up here, I see that I've got my different queries that and it's probably showing ones that that I had before, but this is the one that we actually set up in here. You remember we set up airline in here. So if I click that one, it actually by default tells me it was an airline filter that I set up, so I can save that. And it actually drops that filter at the top. Now, again, this is some, let's do this. Let's go ahead and do done editing. And let's go ahead and choose a couple. So again, filtering is very important when we're doing any kind of reporting. If I choose, maybe I want to compare two different airlines, I can hold down my control key and select a second one. I could even do a third one. If I hit apply changes, it's going to change here, hopefully, by default. Sometimes let's go ahead and refresh. And it didn't pick that up. Interesting. Okay. Well, of course, these always happen live.
Are those
What's
filter
that?
statements? Are those filter statements actually woven into your query as a where clause, or is that
no?
required?
And that's the different. That's one of the difference between your parameter and your filter. You don't need to do that. It was honestly working this morning. What that should have filtered down is just this flight departures delay. And it would only do that because that is the only one where I'm actually have used that column of airline. And I don't know, let's refresh it one more time and see what it does. Huh, okay. Well, how about just one? See what it does. Edit. Okay, let's try one other thing here. Might as well. Let's go back into settings. Multi-airline, got that. Let's go ahead and delete it. Let's add filter again. I'm going to do this as a new dashboard filter instead of utilizing the ones that were in the specific one. Let's change this to airline and hit save. Let's see if this one works. And let's do American, sorry, control. Oh, that one didn't give me the option for two. Okay, let's just do one here. See if it actually picks it up. Yeah, so it did that way. Sorry folks, I'm not quite sure why it wasn't picking up the other one. But again, just different filtering mechanisms that you have here. So let's go ahead and take that off. Apply changes, go back to the full view that we have, and do done editing. So cool. So I think that's everything that we had in covering kind of different queries, your query results. I think again, understanding that the query result pane that you have down here is what drives the visualizations that you've created. So with that, I think, Eric, how are we doing?
We've got good time. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'd love to open it up and get some feedback and some thoughts. Maybe some of the attendees can tell us how they are or they're not using Databricks today, or what some of the other challenges they have or things they like.
And just a quick reminder, if you would like to speak up, you can just raise your hand and I will unmute you.
If not, Rick, one thing that might be cool to share is the actual query history page where we can see some of the performance statistics of all of those queries that ran. I know you showed them the execution tree that shows the SQL execution path, but actually seeing the query history as an administrator and the data tab that starts to collect insights. So Unity Catalog starts to observe the queries that are being made, and those that are quote unquote insightful can start to show up in the Insights tab. But if you want to take a look at the Query History tab on the left nav there, right in the middle.
Yeah, yes, I will do that. The other thing I was going to show that is very similar is just kind of past executions in here. So you can see some of that right from that view. But if we go into query history, as Eric's explaining, then we do see a list of all of the queries that have been run with your duration time, start time for sure, who actually ran that query.
This is really helpful in any cloud data warehouse, right? So understanding the pattern that users are, the where predicates or the filter predicates relative to performance, folks doing really complex joins or sub queries or CTEs or whatever it is they happen to be doing. You can reveal all that here and see the user, of course, and the warehouse that was used and the time, the duration. To really help you understand if there's an optimization routine that needs to be done, or maybe there's folks that have committed really inefficient queries, bad joins, gratuitous uses of sorts that mean nothing, et cetera, et cetera. So you as an SA or a DBA, if you will, can use this tool for those purposes. Particularly queries that fail. That happens, right? We don't write perfect SQL every time. So keeping track of the statuses of not green, right? So the icon of failed or didn't execute, whatever the status happens to be, super helpful and helping your data democratization teammates get a better experience.
And then Eric, you mentioned, was it the Insights option?
Yep. So go to back to our data tab. So the data tab, our Unity Catalog home, if you will, and on any particular table. So if you want to do your trans stats, whatever it is, sure, that one's great. You'll start to see some insights over time will populate up. You can see what frequent queries are, et cetera. Databricks will, of course, mature this feature as we go. Unity Catalog becomes more and more powerful every day. The information schema that is available underneath the Unity Catalog can collect an enormous amount of metadata about your tables, your queries, your dashboards, your alerts, your jobs. In this case, popular SQL queries that all just kind of boil up into this nice UI that gets people stickier and stickier and stickier with your data. They can really understand the context, the content, the columns, and the future tagging and classifications and all kinds of things are coming down the pike. So get really familiar with this Unity Catalog interface.
Yeah, and we can, based on these frequent queries, we can create a quick dashboard based on those and pull in different things based on what that's providing. So another kind of a nice feature to get quickly to insights on the data that you have.
Good deal. Well, we don't necessarily have to run out the clock, Ruthie. I'll turn it back to you if there's questions. If anybody wants to dive deep on maybe where this data came from or how it was processed, maybe any features, maybe with respect to security, et cetera, I'll just toss all those out there as idea generation.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric, and thanks so much, Rick. While we wait, I'll just go over a couple things. I did see someone mention in the chat that they love Databricks. It's superb, and they have a fundamentals badge. So awesome! Keep going. We love seeing that. And just to keep you guys in the loop, our next workshop is coming up in June, the first week of June. So if you'd like to join that, just hop on to bpcs.com and it's under our events tab. You can easily sign up for that as well as our other ones that we have scheduled out. We have a fantastic group of presenters, so you're not going to want to miss these. And yeah, I'll just keep it open for a couple more seconds to see if anyone else has any questions. I don't see anything else coming through. But just a quick reminder that if you have any follow-up questions, you can always connect with us on LinkedIn to ask the questions. You can email us info@bpcs.com, and you can follow us on social media.